Lira Kade was born beneath the dull red skies of Mars, a planet that taught its children early that survival was never given, only earned. From her first steps, the lower gravity lent her lightness her peers envied, but it was the harsh discipline of Martian colonies that shaped her will. At 6, she learned to climb rocky outcrops taller than herself, her small fingers clutching tight against brittle stone. At 10, Europa's ice trench drills honed her endurance, forcing her lungs to adapt to sub-zero depths and crushing pressures. By 15, Lira had joined Earth's Outer Defense Corps, the scrappy force tasked with holding humanity's farthest outposts. Her instructors quickly recognized a rare blend of stubbornness and adaptability, traits that would earn her the infamous Deathworlder nickname among the alien forces who fought her. Training was relentless. Zero-G combat, plasma rifle marksmanship, close-quarters tactics, and mental resilience exercises designed to simulate isolation and terror. She thrived in drills where others faltered, pushing herself beyond pain, beyond fear. Every scar she earned was a badge of honor. Every failure a lesson etched deep. Her rise was meteoric, squad leader by 19, decorated for valor at 21. But it was not medals that defined her. It was the fire inside, the refusal to back down, no matter the odds. The wind whispered low over the scorched plains of Delta 6, carrying with it the acrid tang of ozone and burned soil. Far above, orbital cannons etched glowing scars in the sky, but down here, on the ground, a deceptive stillness settled like a shroud. In the makeshift command post carved from the remnants of a crashed supply drop, Corporal Jex ran a final systems check on his armor. His hands trembled, not from fear, that had been replaced long ago, but from the weight of what was to come. "Squad's tight, but the Myrick won't wait," he muttered. Around him, the hushed conversations of soldiers filled the dim space. Prayers, promises, fears kept carefully hidden behind practiced stoicism. Outside, Lira Kade stood on a ridge, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the alien war forms gathered like a storm about to break. The glare of the setting suns cast long shadows across her armor, scars and burn marks telling silent stories of battles past. She adjusted her gauntlet, fingers brushing over the etched sigils of Earth's Outer Defense Corps. They were symbols of survival, of relentless grit in a galaxy that often underestimated humanity. A voice crackled softly in her comms. "Kade, you copy? Command orders still stand. Hold position. Await extraction." She stared out at the encroaching enemy, a silent defiance burning in her eyes. For most, the coming battle was a mission to follow orders. For Lira, it was a test of everything she was made of. The calm before the storm was fleeting. The order came in just past midnight cycle on Delta 6. It was short, blunt, and delivered with the sharp authority of the Galactic Council's High Command. "Unit D-273, cease advance, fall back. This is not your war." But to Sergeant Lira Kade of Earth's Outer Defense Corps, born under Martian gravity, forged in Europa's trench drills and labelled Deathworlder by every alien mouth that couldn't pronounce human without flinching, the message might as well have been static. She stood ankle-deep in scorched sand, plasma rifle clenched in one hand, her armor hissing from the strain of near-constant impacts. Around her, the broken remnants of her squad lay half-buried in the blackened dust. Only 3 of them still moved. Barely. Above, the sky boiled with clouds torn apart by orbital fire. The Myrick had sent in their warforms. 6-legged juggernauts, tall as dropships, pulsing with bioelectric fury. The kind of enemy that made most species break and run. The kind of enemy Lira had been trained for. The Council had ordered her to retreat. She was supposed to wait for arbitration. Diplomacy. Let it be sorted by those who had never once held a dying comrade in their arms. She checked her comms one more time. Static, not broken, just ignored. "Council be damned," she muttered, and then she stood up. Sergeant Miro's breath came in ragged gasps as he crawled behind the shattered hull of a downed dropship. His plasma rifle was jammed, useless now against the onrushing Myrick warforms. Around him, the screams of dying comrades echoed like ghosts. He glanced at the comm, static, broken words, then silence. The squad was fractured, scattered like leaves in a storm. A sudden screech tore through the air. A Myrick drone leapt into view, its claw snapping inches from Miro's face. Reflexes honed by years of combat kicked in. He rolled, fired a desperate shot with his sidearm, and watched the alien collapse. Pain blossomed in his side, but he forced himself up. "If Lyra's still alive," he muttered, voice barely audible, "then maybe we can turn this around." They called humans Deathworlders for a reason. Earth wasn't the deadliest planet in the galaxy, but it had birthed something worse than apex predators. It had created a species that adapted to pain, that treated fear like a training partner, and saw retreat not as wisdom, but unfinished business. Lyra's boots crunched over charred gravel as she made her way to the edge of the ridge. Below her, the Myrick vanguard gathered, unaware that any humans remained alive in this sector. Their formations rippled like muscle. A disturbing blend of biology and technology. Most soldiers would have radioed in for extraction or prayed to their ancestors. Lira adjusted her gauntlet and overrode her suit's safety limiters. "Command override. Kade, Lira. Authorization Delta 195. Engaging proximity beacon." Her AI protested. "Warning. Unauthorized combat engagement in violation of High Command orders. Standing down is advised." She grinned. Not today. She launched into the basin like a meteor, thrusters whining, rifle hot in her hands. The impact of Lyra's assault rippled through the Myrick formation like a shockwave. Her plasma bolts found weak spots, joints, vents, and nerve clusters, honed through painful experience. One warform collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs. Another reeled as Lira vaulted onto its carapace, jammed a det charge under its thorax, and launched off just before the blast split it in two. Comms lit up. "Is that Kade? She's alive! By the void, she's fighting back!" Miro's voice crackled in. "All surviving units converge on Kade's signal. We hold the line here." The humans rallied. Wounded, outgunned, and nearly broken, they surged back into the fray, inspired not by orders, but by the sheer madness of one of their own refusing to fall. The Myrick warforms were designed for dominance, tactical superiority, psychological intimidation, but they had never faced a Deathworlder who ignored fear. One commander chirped in alarm through the Myrick gestalt. "This unit does not retreat. It accelerates toward threat vectors." Logic loop. Broken. As Lira cut a blazing arc through their flank, her armor now cracked and sparking, the alien cohesion faltered. The Council observers, watching from distant orbit, issued queries in alarm. Human Unit Kade has defied direct withdrawal orders. Galactic Protocol prohibits rogue engagement. But down on Delta 6, the protocol had bled out hours ago. All that remained was survival, and Lira Kade did not stand down. By dawn cycle, the battlefield lay strewn with the wreckage of both Myrick and human alike. Smoke coiled into the bruised sky. Lira collapsed to one knee beside a ruined crawler, her chest heaving. Blood smeared her cheek. Her armor was down to its exoskeleton in places. Jex knelt beside her, his own face pale. "We held them off. Myrick are pulling back." Lira nodded faintly. "Good, let command come mop up." Above them, dropships finally arrived. Too late for the first wave, just in time for the press photos. A high-ranking council envoy stepped from the lead ship, flanked by armoured aides. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said, not without awe. Lira looked up, eyes burning. "I saved what was left of my people. If that's a crime, charge me." The envoy stared at the battlefield, at the human survivors gathered behind her, wounded, limping, defiant. "No," he finally said, "it's something else. Something far more dangerous." News of Delta 6 spread across the galaxy like plasma fire. On Virex Station, the story was retold in hushed tones. A Deathworlder girl stood her ground. On the Rimworld colonies, posters showed her silhouette framed by flame and ruin. In the Galactic Council halls, debates erupted. If one human can rally a force like this, what happens when more follow? They weren't supposed to fight. We banned them for a reason. But bans meant little in the face of legend. Lira Kade's name became a rallying cry for every species too small to be noticed, too weak to matter. Not because she won, but because she refused to lose. They tried to court-martial her, tried to bury her under protocol and reprimands, but footage of the battle leaked. Survivors spoke. Even a few Myrick defectors whispered the truth. She fought like a creature possessed. She stared down death and made it blink. So the Council did what frightened governments always do. They promoted her, gave her a medal, sent her on advisory tours across the Rim. But wherever she went, whispers followed, and in hidden corners of the galaxy, training camps began to stir. Because somewhere out there, a girl from Mars had proven that orders could be broken, fear could be silenced, and no one, not even the galaxy's oldest empires, could stop a Deathworlder who refused to stand down. The medical bay aboard the Resolute buzzed with low lights and the rhythmic hiss of automated systems. Lira Kade sat up slowly, her muscles stiff with the memory of pain, her eyes scanning the room for threats even now. A nursebot hovered close, extending a nutrient pack, but she waved it off. She wasn't hungry for sustenance. She was hungry for answers. The scars on her body were healing. The ones beneath the skin less so. She had fought alone, defied direct orders, and lived. That alone should have earned her a court-martial. Instead, she had been met with commendations, silence, and sidelong glances in the corridors from beings who didn't know whether to salute her or flee. Commander Jen had visited her once since the battle, leaving behind the resolution that changed everything. Now she was no longer just a soldier. She was a symbol, an inconvenient one. Power didn't like being reminded of its limitations. Footsteps approached, real ones. She turned her head and saw Sergeant Miro limping into the bay, supported by a walking brace and sheer Martian stubbornness. "You look like you went 10 rounds with a black hole," Lira said, her voice rasping from disuse. Miro chuckled. "I could say the same, except you punched back harder." He dropped onto a seat beside her bed and fell silent for a moment, watching the medical readouts flicker. "They're calling it the Kade Protocol now," he said. "Your stand, it forced the Council to admit their model of controlled warfare, doesn't hold when reality bleeds." Lira frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means they want you to lead." The words hit her like a punch. She had spent her entire life following orders, even when breaking them. Now, the same council that told her to stand down wanted her to stand up on command. "What exactly am I leading?" she asked. Miro tapped his data slate, bringing up a new logo, unfamiliar and sharp, a human fist surrounded by alien glyphs. "A new interspecies task force," he said, "multi-planet, independent of council politics. You'll pick the team, you'll pick the missions." Lira narrowed her eyes. "That sounds dangerous." Miro smiled grimly. "Yeah, that's why they want you. You already proved you don't wait for permission." The door hissed open again. This time it was Fleet Commander Jen. "Sergeant Kade," the Talkin said formally, "we're assembling something new, something that won't blink when the real enemy arrives." Lira raised an eyebrow. "The Myrick weren't the real enemy." Jen's expression darkened. "No," she said, "they were the distraction." The war room aboard the Resolute was unlike any Lira had seen. It wasn't the size, though it stretched across 3 decks, or the tech, though holotables flickered with data streams from dozens of systems. It was the people, or rather, the collection of beings. Humanity no longer stood alone. The table was surrounded by representatives from across the fractured alliances of the galaxy. Dreth war philosophers in ritual armor, Talkin tacticians with eyes that shimmered like nebulae, Kirellian signal chorus leaders who spoke in layered harmonics. Even a few quiet, watchful Galdari, a species that rarely left their mist-shrouded world. At the head of the table stood Lira. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She preferred grit and plasma to bureaucracy and planning, but here in this moment they weren't debating policies, they were bracing for war. Jen stood beside her, directing the attention of the room to the holographic projection rising between them. 2 standard cycles ago, our deep probes beyond the Myrick blockade encountered something impossible, Jen said. The hologram shifted, displaying a structure so vast it eclipsed a moon, not built but grown, biomechanical, pulsing with energy. The Myrick were harvesting tech, Jen continued, reverse engineering weapons, warforms, but this is not theirs. This predates them, a seed world, a hive intelligence. Murmurs rippled through the room. A progenitor? One Dreth asked. Worse, Lira said, stepping forward. A godmaker. The room fell silent. Lira nodded at Miro, who keyed in a new data burst. It showed fragmentary footage, Myrick warforms tearing themselves apart, bioconstructs going rogue, systems failing en masse. The Myrick weren't building an empire, Lira said. They were being used to test weapons, breeding tools of destruction. Someone or something is guiding this. Jen leaned forward. We believe the true enemy is awakening, and when it does, it won't negotiate. It won't issue ultimatums. It will consume. She looked around the room. That's why we need the protocol. There were no objections, only quiet acceptance. Later, alone in the observation deck, Lira stared out at the stars. The battle on Delta 6 had changed everything. She wasn't just a Martian soldier anymore. She was the tip of the spear. A whisper broke her silence. "You don't trust them." She turned. A Corellian stood behind her, a shadow in layered robes, voice melodic and strange. "I trust that they're afraid," Lira said, "and fear makes people act." The Corellian tilted its head. "And you?" Lira didn't answer right away. She looked down at her gauntlet, where the scars of Delta 6 were still etched into the armor. "I'm not afraid," she said finally, "but I am tired of waiting for someone else to act." The Corellian's eyes flared softly. "Then lead. The stars are watching." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Lira Kade found herself thrust from the front lines into a role she had never sought. Diplomat, strategist, symbol. The Protocol, a coalition effort uniting disparate fleets and races, began mobilizing at an unprecedented pace. Star systems once embroiled in petty conflicts now stood shoulder to shoulder, bound by the urgency of a looming threat. Yet not all were eager to follow humanity's lead. Back on Mars, whispers of dissent grew louder. Some questioned why a soldier, a Deathworlder, should dictate galactic policy. Others feared humanity's defiance might provoke a war they could not win. Lira understood their doubts. She had faced similar uncertainty in the trenches, but retreat wasn't an option. Not anymore. In a packed chamber on the Resolute, representatives debated the next move. "We cannot allow the Myric progenitor to awaken unchecked," Jen asserted. "Our intelligence confirms its growth is exponential. We have mere cycles before it becomes unstoppable." A Dreth elder rose, his voice gravelly. "Our forces are stretched thin. We need more time." Lyra's voice cut through the tension. "We don't have time." The room turned to her, surprise flickering in every eye. "I've seen what waiting does," she said. "I watched my squad die because someone chose diplomacy over action. This is the moment we make a stand." The chamber fell silent. Jen nodded slowly. "We strike at the seed world, a surgical operation to sever the head before it fully forms." Maps flickered to life, highlighting the target, a living fortress bristling with biomechanical defenses. Lyra's heart pounded. This was beyond anything she had faced, but the spark that had ignited in her on Delta 6 blazed hotter than ever. She turned to Miro. "Ready the strike team." The Resolute cut through hyperspace like a silver bullet, carrying hope and desperation in equal measure. In the quiet moments before battle, Lira meditated on the path that had led her here. From the red plains of Mars to the frozen depths of Europa, from the bloody sands of Delta 6 to this moment poised on the edge of annihilation. She was humanity's defiant spark, a beacon in the dark. And this time, failure was not an option. Strike team assembled in the dim glow of the Resolute's armory bay, weapons gleaming and armor sealed tight. Each soldier carried their own history of hardship and resolve, but all shared the same unyielding purpose. Lira moved among them, her presence steadying nerves and sharpening focus. "Remember," she said, "this isn't just a mission, it's a message. We're here to cut out the heart of the Myric threat before it grows beyond control. Precision, speed, and unbreakable will." The transport pods shook as they launched into the atmosphere of the Myric seed world, a planet unlike any other. Its surface was a shifting mass of organic tendrils and metallic spires, alive and reactive. Sensors screamed warnings as bioelectric currents surged through the ground beneath them. Lyra's boots hit the soil with a thud that echoed through the tense silence. Ahead, monstrous shapes stirred, their many eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. The battle began with a roar. Plasma bolts arced through the tangled landscape, cutting through sinewy walls and armored exoskeletons. The Myric warforms responded in kind, their claws shredding armor and sending sparks into the air. Lyra fought like a force of nature, fluid, ferocious, unstoppable. Every movement was a testament to years of brutal training and raw determination. Beside her, Miro covered her six, dispatching foes with brutal efficiency. But this was no ordinary fight. The seed world itself seemed to resist, reshaping and regenerating faster than they could destroy. Suddenly, a massive surge of energy pulsed through the battlefield, and the Myric Overmind's voice echoed, not through speakers, but directly inside their minds. "You cannot sever the root without cutting the forest." The ground beneath them quaked violently, threatening to swallow them whole. Lyra's comm crackled urgently. "Retreat is not an option. Focus on the core." With a grim nod, she charged forward, eyes locked on the glowing heart of the planet, a colossal bioengineered organ pulsing with deadly potential. The final battle had begun. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burning flesh as Lira surged forward, her boots pounding against the shifting terrain of the Myrick seed world. Every step felt like sinking into a living nightmare. The ground pulsed beneath her like a wounded beast, veins of glowing bioelectricity snaking across the fleshy surfaces and metallic tendrils that writhed like serpents. Above, the sky was choked with storm clouds, heavy with ash and charged energy. Her squad followed in tight formation, plasma rifles blazing, cutting through the writhing mass of Myrick warforms that emerged from every crevice and crevasse. These were no mere soldiers. They were extensions of the planet itself, bioengineered nightmares fused with cruel technology. Lyra's visor HUD blinked warnings as energy spikes surged through the ground. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward, focusing on the glowing core that pulsed like a malignant heart in the distance, the bioengineered organ that sustained the Myrick's deadly reach. Destroying it meant crippling their entire war effort, but getting there meant surviving an inferno. The first wave hit like a tidal wave of clawed monsters. Six-legged juggernauts, their carapaces glowing with bioluminescent menace, charged forward with terrifying speed. Lyra rolled beneath a snapping talon, firing a precise plasma burst into the creature's vulnerable underbelly. It screamed, a horrible wet sound, and collapsed, twitching in death throes. Around her, the battlefield was chaos incarnate. Miro was already a few meters behind, suppressing fire with brutal efficiency, his own armor battered but his spirit unyielding. "Kade!" he yelled over the roar of combat. "We're splitting up. The core's deeper in. Take the left flank." She nodded, signaling the squad. "Stick tight. No distractions." The squad sliced through the enemy, but the seed world fought back. Vines thick as tree trunks lashed out, coated with corrosive toxins that hissed on contact with their armor. The ground itself shifted beneath their feet, trying to trap them in fleshy pits. Lyra's gauntlet flared as she activated her thrusters, vaulting over a sudden sinkhole just in time to dodge a spiked tendril swinging with deadly intent. She landed hard, barely steady, and pressed forward. Suddenly a shriek split the air. A Myrick dreadnought warform burst from the shadows, towering twice the height of a dropship, its bioorganic armor plating shimmering like molten metal. Its multiple eyes locked on Lira with predatory intelligence. No distractions, she reminded herself. The dreadnought swung a massive claw and she ducked just in time, plasma rifle blazing. The shots bounced harmlessly off the creature's armor. She cursed under her breath. Standard weapons wouldn't cut it. Her fingers flew to her sidearm, a high-intensity plasma pistol designed for close quarters. She fired a rapid volley into a vulnerable joint near the creature's hip. The warform roared, reeling back, but not before it lashed out, sending her sprawling into the thick biometallic underbrush. Pain flared in her ribs, but she scrambled up. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a war for humanity's future. Miro appeared at her side, shoulder-mounted cannon blazing. The dreadnought turned, snarling, and Miro's shots struck true. The warform staggered, giving Lira an opening. "Now!" she shouted, drawing a plasma charge from her belt. The grenade hissed as she lobbed it into the creature's exposed abdomen. It exploded with a violent blast of energy and shrapnel. The dreadnought screamed and collapsed, convulsing violently before going still. Behind them, the battlefield was an inferno of war. Screams, explosions, and the crackling hum of plasma filled the air. The Myrick swarmed in waves, creatures of living metal and flesh, relentless and terrifying. Lyra's HUD flashed again, ammunition low. She signaled Miro, "Fall back, reload, and push forward. The core is just ahead." They moved through a narrow corridor of twisted organic growths, the walls pulsing and contracting as if alive. The bioelectric current surged dangerously close. Ahead, the glowing core throbbed, a massive, pulsating mass of bioengineered sinew and circuitry, suspended above a pit of writhing cables and organic filaments. It radiated raw, lethal power. Suddenly, the Overmind's voice thundered again inside their comms, cold and rasping. "You cannot sever the root without cutting the forest. You will fail." Lira gritted her teeth. "We don't fail." With a sharp command, she ordered the squad to form a perimeter around the core. Explosives were readied. Plasma charges, EMP bursts, everything they had. The plan was simple. Detonate the charges simultaneously to cripple the core's bioelectric systems. The first charge was set near the base of the core, the second deeper within its network of nerves, the third at the control filaments that interfaced with the Myrick hive mind. But just as they were about to detonate, a new horror emerged. A living wall of Myrick bioarmor plating surged forward, blocking their escape. From its center stepped a colossal warform, taller and deadlier than any before, the Myrick Overmind's personal guardian. Its multi-jointed limbs flexed like steel blades, eyes glowing with murderous intent. It snarled, mandibles clicking. Lira's heart pounded. This was the final guardian, the ultimate test. The fate of the mission hung on her shoulders. She barked orders. Hold the line! Cover the charges! The battle that followed was a blur of motion and violence. Lira led the charge, ducking under swinging claws, firing bursts that seared flesh and shattered armor. The Guardian warform was relentless, a whirlwind of death and destruction. Miro and the squad fell back, providing suppressive fire, while Lira engaged the beast directly. She dodged a crushing blow and stabbed a plasma knife into a vulnerable joint, feeling the heat sear through her gauntlet. But the warform retaliated with a savage strike, sending her sprawling across the blood-soaked ground. Pain exploded in her side, but she forced herself up. She triggered the charges with a final command, yelling, "Now!" A symphony of explosions erupted around the core. Plasma fire and bioelectric energy collided in a storm of destruction. The core writhed violently as the charges tore into its vital systems. The Guardian roared in fury, stumbling as its connection to the Overmind faltered. Lira pushed herself forward, firing one last shot at the Guardian's eye cluster. The creature faltered, its multi-limbed form crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact. The core convulsed, then began to collapse in on itself, tendrils and filaments snapping like brittle glass. The ground shook violently as the seed world began to destabilize. The bioengineered life forms that thrived on the core's power faltered and died. The mission was a success, but escape was now the only goal. Lira grabbed Miro's arm. "We move. Now." They sprinted through the collapsing cavern, debris crashing and the earth trembling beneath their feet. Explosions echoed as the planet itself convulsed in its death throes. Outside, the sky roared with the sound of incoming reinforcements, ships streaking through the atmosphere, their gunships ready to cover their retreat. The squad barely made it back to the dropships, boarding just as the seed world erupted in a cataclysmic explosion behind them. The blast lit the horizon, a crimson wave of destruction that marked the end of the Myrick's bioengineered scourge. Lira slumped in her seat, sweat and blood streaking her face. Her armor was scorched, her body bruised, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. The battle had been brutal, the cost had been high, but humanity had struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy. As the Resolute soared away from the dying planet, Lira stared out into the stars and whispered, "This is just the beginning." The hum of the Resolute's engines was a grim lullaby after the chaos they had left behind. The deep space cruiser sliced through the void, carrying battered warriors and flickering hopes back to the front lines. Lira sat alone in the medical bay, her body wrapped in a cooling gel blanket. Every breath still carried the sharp sting of pain, ribs bruised, muscles torn, but none of it compared to the weight pressing on her mind. The battle had been won. Yes, but the war was far from over. Through the reinforced viewport, stars streaked past like silent sentinels. The galaxy was vast, but every system pulsed with tension, a powder keg ready to ignite. The Myrick seed world had been a single node in a sprawling network, and severing it was only the first step. Commander Voss entered quietly, his face etched with exhaustion but eyes sharp as ever. "Kade," he said, pulling up a holographic map of the sector. Red markers flickered. Enemy concentrations, reinforcement routes, unknown signals. "More coming?" Lira asked. Voss nodded. "The Overmind's reach extends farther than we feared. The bioengineered networks are adapting. It's like fighting a hydra. Cut off one head, two more grow back." Lira clenched her fists. "Then we keep fighting. We adapt faster." Voss smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. But we need a new strategy, more than brute force." The door hissed and Miro stepped in, still smeared with dirt and blood. Intel just came in from recon drones. The Myrick are developing a new weapon, something that can neutralize our tech, scramble our comms, and turn our own systems against us. Lyra's brow furrowed. Electronic warfare combined with bioorganic tech? That's a nightmare. Miro nodded grimly. Exactly. If it's deployed, it could cripple entire fleets. The room fell silent, the gravity of the threat settling like a weight. Voss broke the silence. We need a specialist, someone who understands both sides, the biology and the technology, someone who can outthink this new weapon. Lira looked at them both. There's one person, Dr. Serin Valek. Voss's eyes narrowed. The xenobiologist? She's brilliant, but a wild card. Miro grinned. If anyone can crack the Overmind's code, it's her. Lira stood, pain forgotten in the surge of purpose. Then we find her, bring her aboard, because this war just got a lot more complicated. Outside, the stars seemed to shimmer with distant possibilities, threats and alliances yet to be forged, battles yet to be fought. And Lira Kade, the Deathworlder who had refused to stand down, was ready to face them all.